before your eyes. Step by step, you're on your way. Welcome to a brighter day. Don't you know it feels good to be alive? You could be larger than life, bigger than the world, living out the hopes and dreams of every boy and every girl. You could fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You could have all you ever wanted, shoot the moon and reach for Mars. You know you could. Yeah, and times are changing everywhere. Do we dream and do we dare? It's up to you, the door is open wide. Feel the rhythm of today, learn the part and join the play. The world is here, let's take it for a ride. You could be larger than life, bigger than the world, living out the hopes and dreams of every boy and every girl. You could fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You could have all you ever wanted, shoot the moon and reach for Mars. You know you're good. Larger, larger than, bigger, bigger than, living hopes and dreams. Every boy and girl, higher, higher than, brighter, brighter than, all you wanted. You know you could be larger than life, bigger than the world, living out the hopes and dreams of every boy and every girl. You could fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You can have all you ever wanted. Larger, larger, bigger, hopes and dreams. Every boy, you can fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You can have all you ever wanted. You know you could. Here's your story, let's begin. The water's fine, come on, dive in. The future's here, it's right before your eyes. Step by step, you're on your way. Welcome to a brighter day. Don't you know it feels good to be alive? You could be larger than life, bigger than the world, living out the hopes and dreams of every boy and every girl. You could fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than could be larger than life. Here's your story, let's begin. The water's fine, come on, dive in. The future's here, it's right before your eyes. Step by step, you're on your way. Welcome to a brighter day. Don't you know it feels good to be alive? You could be larger than life, bigger than the world, living out the hopes and dreams of every boy and every girl. You could fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You could have all you ever wanted, shoot the moon and reach for Mars. You know you could. Yeah, and times are changing everywhere. Do we dream and do we dare? It's up to you, the door is open wide. Feel the rhythm of today, learn the part and join the play. The world is here, let's take it for a ride. You could be larger than life. Here's your story, let's begin. The water's fine, come on, dive in. The future's here, it's right before your eyes. Step by step, you're on your way. Welcome to a brighter day. Don't you know it feels good to be alive? You could be larger than life, bigger than the world, living out the hopes and dreams of every boy and every girl. You could fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You could have all you ever wanted, shoot the moon and reach for Mars. You know you could. Yeah, and times are changing everywhere. Do we dream?
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I believe you got sound. Somebody give me a thumbs up. Somebody give me a something. Oh my God. Sound good now. Woo. I'm sweating. 78 degrees here and I'm sweating. Okay. Welcome back to the channel, Grand Colombia, and welcome to Coffee Time Live. And that's what 78 degrees looks like. Those are low-hanging clouds. Remember, we got a little altitude here. Somebody said, it's always foggy. Yeah, once in a while it's foggy, but these are clouds. Yeah, we're living in the clouds. All right. Let's see what everybody's saying. I can imagine. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. First of all, I had a bit of a disaster this week. My phone doesn't swim and it's not waterproof, and it's been living in rice. And somebody said plug it in the charger after it's been in rice for a while, it'll warm up. But some of the functions have returned. I checked this a little bit ago, but it's still not working right. I was a little panicked over it because you use phone authorization for things like bank. So, yeah, it was a bit of a panic. I've been preoccupied with it for the past couple of days to the point where I didn't even realize this was Sunday. About 5 o'clock in the morning, I figured it out. All right. This week, we had a meetup, and it was, I sent him, a guy's been wanting to meet, a local real estate guy. He's been wanting to meet up for weeks. And I was going to be near a restaurant that I like a lot for breakfast, although I wasn't going for breakfast, but I was going to be near this place, Bianco's. So it's on Centenario. And it's a great bakery. That's the place that has the Eggs Benedict that I rave about. So I said, why don't you meet me there? And then I told somebody else, and then I think I posted up that I was going to be there at I think 10 o'clock in the morning. And so the real estate guy was there. He brought somebody, and if you're watching him, I apologize, I don't remember his name. If Mark or Mike, if you remember, could you type it in? I feel bad about that. Alejandra was there. I invited her because she was fixing something for me, and it meant that she had to go and do things. So I invited her to breakfast. I would buy her breakfast if she was free, as a thank you. So she was there. Mike was there with some visa agent. He stopped in. Mark was there. So it turned it. We started out with a couple people, then pull up another chair, and then another chair, and then another chair, and then another chair. I don't like gatherings very much, but it wasn't bad. It was tolerable. We were there for about 2 hours. There was a lot of interesting conversation, actually. So that was pretty cool. So let's see. Mark, possibly it could be a weekly meeting as a way to meet, share, network, get to know each other. Yeah, the problem with that is I posed that in the past, and I've offered up like the Grand Columbia Facebook channel in order to organize it. There's what's up, there's things like that, but nobody really wants to do it. And frankly, I'm just too busy to be an administrator of something like that. So it sounds good in theory, but I mean, you guys have been trying to hook up with me. Just think about how long it's been, trying to get me nailed down. So I wouldn't be a very good administrator of it. All right, what else we got? We got Juka. Thank you very much. Greatly appreciated. I heard the bell go off this morning when he did that. And then soon after, Mr. Anonymous. Thank you, Jerry. I appreciate it. Let's see. Jerry, good morning from 119 degree. I thought 78 was warm. David Abbott Bowl. Abid Bowl. Sorry for butchering your name. Let's see. Oh, I got that thing that's popped up here again. Let me see if I can move it. It's blocking the view of the chat. All right, let's see how that works. Hello there, I'm in Armenia and I love it here. How long have you been here? Yuka, greetings from Finland, land of NATO. Lisa Lord, good morning from Shreveport, Louisiana. It's hot and muggy there, I could imagine. I mean, last time I was in Louisiana, I thought I was going to sweat to death. Yeah, I can't hear you. No sound, no sound. Yeah, we knew that. I think we got past that. And why is this not? Oh boy. Working now. Okay, now, good morning. Nope. The chat that I can read is it's not showing things. It stopped. It froze. So let me go to the one I can't read. Mike Jarvis, good morning. I can't put you on the screen either. Boy, we just got it together today, don't we? And how do I get Lisa off the screen? Ay, Dios mío. Let me pop this out. There we go. And let's see. Mike Jarvis, good morning. Jerry, good morning. Sam and Peg, morning, everyone. Nodic, Mark, configure the mic again. Oh, yeah, we were way past that. Morning, Jerry. Mike, sound okay. And it quit working again. Okay. So let me go back to get it off the screen. And what else we have? Turtle, good morning. Speaking of Turtle, we are going to do the medical thing today, which I think everybody's going to love it because he's been through 4 times, several quite serious, through the medical system here, hospital and all of that. But with my phone, I wasn't able to communicate with him. Then I remembered, oh, Facebook. So I hunted him down on Facebook, but he replied back just before we're getting started here. So we're going to see if we can do that next week. Sound good, works okay. Echo? Shouldn't be an echo. Libby, good morning. Let's see. Don, good morning from Panama. How you doing? Fun glitches of live stream. We've been going pretty good for quite a while, but you know, it just gave up the ghost. So, wasn't a lot of news this week. There were 2 gun murders. In those in those 4 barrios where all the stuff happens that you will never go, but you know, 2 in a week. So, but when people say is there crime in Armenia, well, it depends on where you are. Like up here in the north, no, we don't even get our phones stolen. But if you go to those barrios, there's crime every day, and it's like always like that. So you just stay out of those. They're down in the south. They're very poor. There's nothing there. You know, it just houses. There's nothing. There's no reason to go there anyway. So you know, it's kind of a non-issue for those of us that live here. But I got a little news thing here. I found kind of interesting. Let me put it up. Alert for possible arrival of Venezuelan doctors with deficient and precarious training in Colombia. Arrival in Colombia, not training in Colombia. And I read the article, and it never occurred to me, but in Venezuela, they have these things called community doctors. And I think there's probably some placebo effect to it. You know, it's just people that are selected and they give them some like EMT training and they're the doctor in the community because, you know, by their constitution, they promise healthcare, but they have no way to do healthcare, you know, these days, the way it's falling apart. So they just, you know, hey, you're a doctor. You're a doctor. It's like Oprah. You want a doctor. So they give them some basic training. Well, what apparently has been happening by the hundreds, they've been thinking, and I think some of them might seriously think they're doctors, because who knows what they've been doing, you know, maybe they've treated some pretty serious things. I don't know. But apparently they're coming over into Colombia and probably other places and portraying themselves as doctors. Well, the ones that try to get into, you know, maybe a clinic or a hospital or something like that, well, that's where found out, because in Colombia, I mean, you have to produce all your credentials. They have to be of a certain standard. You can't just be a doctor. You have to go through it. It's the same as in the United States. But somebody could just hang out their shingle, go to some place and say, I'm a doctor, and put their paper on the wall. And so it's in the news to be careful of that, beware of that. And I just thought that was kind of interesting. There. Okay. Bret Hart or Shawn Michaels, who's a better wrestler? I thought maybe they were singers. I don't know. All right, so I want to talk about, last week I talked about ordering up meat. So I ordered from the place that does the Angus and from the place Tomahawk that has had a website. It didn't work before. It turns out I'm their very first mail order. We had a lot of conversations this past week. I will tell you that with the Angus, I ordered it 5 o'clock Tuesday night and it arrived Wednesday morning. So that was pretty cool. And I took a picture unboxing it. Well, let me, a little video clip. Let me show you that. And there's no sound to that. So it's just this cardboard box. It amounted to, how much was in there? 2, 4, 6 or 7 pounds. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 pounds. That's 6 pounds of meat. And this is the Angus imported from the US, but it's a company here in Colombia that brings it in bulk and then ships it off. My understanding is they do a lot of the restaurant businesses that order it up. So there was that. And well, I'll get to, let me talk about the Tomahawk now. And then I'll get to the quality, because I cooked 1 steak from each. This is over the week. Cooked 1 steak from each, and I made 1 sandwich. So the Tomahawk, let me show you how it came. Oh, the shipping on the last one was 30,000 pesos, $7. And the shipping on this next one was 60 or 7, it was 70,000 pesos. It was a lot, but they didn't know what they were doing. And you'll see why when I show this thing. It was their very first one. And so they were worried that it was going to go bad. And I messaged them. I said, well, I get orders all the time from different things, not necessarily food, but, you know, for the most part, you get things overnight or the next day. So if it's frozen or if it's vacuum packed and you put in, bags of dry ice or whatever, it won't be a problem. Besides, they also have the option of refrigerated. But they didn't know, and I kind of chuckled when I actually got this. But let me show you the unboxing of the Tomahawk. Well, the Tomahawk is national beef, Colombian beef. Had tape all over the place. It's hard to do this one-handed, you know. All right, so it doesn't look like much, but this was I believe 9 pounds. There was a T-bone. And if you can notice in the T-bone, there's some marbling. I will say these were quite cheap. The T-bone was more expensive, and that was $7 a pound. This was the ribeye. They sent it all as not cut up, which actually I prefer. You could do a rib roast. You can shave it. You can do a lot of things with it like that. So that part was pretty good. But the box size was ridiculous. The cost was excessive because they just didn't know what they were doing. And I sent him a message, and I explained to him how the other one came. I told him what I was doing and how, you know, how his came and the packaging. And he just took offense, like they'll do in Colombia. Even though had nothing, wasn't criticizing him. I was giving him some information to try to help him out. But he was offended. Well, you know, there's a reason that you know, and they're international. It's all imported. We have naturally grass-fed, but it's nothing to do with that. But he did push the grass-fed. To be perfectly honest with you, as far as I'm concerned, in a place like Colombia or in Ecuador or wherever, Peru, that's not an asset. That's a liability. Because and there is good beef. I was hoping this would be it, but I'll talk about that. But most places in South America just take their cows and throw them out in the field, or steer, bulls, whatever. Throw them out in the field and let them eat. Okay, that sounds great and it's natural. But we're also in the Andes, and they're climbing up and down mountains, and Ecuador is ridiculous. They look like mountain goats because they'd be in such steep, jagged, you didn't even know cows could do that. So what it does, it makes them really tough, really stringy. You can argue the taste of corn-fed versus the taste of grass-fed. The thing is, you can get grass-fed does have a different taste, and it's not as pleasant, but you can get used to it really quick. So that's, you know, people will say, well, the taste, okay, but you get used to it fast. Like, I think part way into a steak, you can get used to it, so it's not that big a deal. But being tough and not having marbling is a problem. And it's not so much about being grass-fed, it's the way it's grass-fed. If they brought them hay and they stayed in the barn and didn't go out and hike around for, you know, hours at a time and build up all those muscles, then it wouldn't be such an issue. But it's cheaper just to let them go out and, you know, let nature feed them. And so that's what you get in return. Now I'm going to talk about the quality of what these were. First, I took one of the Angus, of course, and I took the ribeye. I didn't have anything else. They're all it's all in my freezer. My freezer's packed full. So I took the Angus ribeye, cooked it up, and it was exactly what you'd think it was. They're not prime, but the ones I have qualified for between select and choice, leaning towards choice. They were good. They were tender. Had no problem at all with them, except they don't butcher them quite the same. And I left the. I know now. Next time I'll work to trim it. You need to make sure all the silver skin's off. Well, I wasn't paying attention. I threw it in a pan and cooked it, and then I'm chewing on silver skin, which is, you know, you're not. It's like chewing a piece of steel. So aside from that, that was just a trimming thing in the future. It was really good. And let me show you what it looked like. Doesn't look so appetizing actually in this video, I'll admit, but in real life it didn't look so dead. It didn't look so pale. It was actually quite delicious. You can see it's cooked medium rare. Had a, had a sear on it. It was really good. So except for a couple of the chewy parts that I should have trimmed off, it was pretty outstanding. The downside is the T-bone's more, so this is going to be skewed, but the average price was $20 a pound. So that means the T-bone was more than $20 a pound, and the ribeye was less than $20 a pound. Each a few dollars. So that, it's kind of pricey. Now, I don't know what they go for in the U.S. So what does a choice ribeye per pound or a T-bone per pound go for in the U.S.? I don't know. Used to be, when I was there 10 years ago, it was, $7, $8 a pound. So I can imagine what it is now. So let's talk about the tomahawk, the national beef. Now, if you look here, you'll see in the T-bone, there's a little, if you can see it on your screen, but there's some marbling. The ribeye had absolutely no marbling whatsoever. It reminded me of those cheap, what were they called? The roast that you can't even cook as a roast. It's so solid. What is that cut? I can't think of it, but they sell them as a roast, but it's probably like $1 a pound. It was a lot like that. I will say it was very flavorful. But I cooked up the steak. I didn't even take a picture of it. I mean, it looked okay, but it was a chore to eat. So how would you cook this? Well, what I'll probably do is take the rest of it and cook it as a roast, stuff it with garlic, see how that goes. And maybe that'll be okay. But I mentioned I made a sandwich. So what I did was I took that big chunk, and I've got a very sharp knife, and I shaved enough beef for a sandwich. And I took that, mixed it with a little olive oil and little minced pieces of garlic. And I let it sit for a minute, and then I fried that up and put that in a sandwich. That was awesome. That was delicious. It wasn't tough. So, if you like ribeye steak sandwiches, this was definitely passable. And for $7 a pound, hard to argue it. It was very flavorful. I will give it that. But it was, eating it as a steak, it was like a shoe leather. So that was not great. So here's my conclusion. The shipping with Atlantic, the Angus, was seamless, was flawless, went really well. I think they asked me for a picture of my cedula, which is typical. They sent me a WhatsApp and asked me for that, and so I sent that to them. But like I say, I ordered at 5 o'clock on Tuesday and got it Wednesday. Actually, it arrived while I was at that coffee meeting, I believe. I think. Might be wrong. Might get my days mixed up, but I think it was. Because Alejandra, I handed her my phone. She answered it, and she said it. They were delivering it in 10 minutes. Well, so they dropped it off with the guards downstairs, and that's the way it went. So the packaging was fine. They were still completely frozen. Apparently, it was one of the refrigerated trucks. It's just pricey. It's something I might do maybe twice a year, and cut them up smaller and keep them in my freezer, kind of thing. But if you want a good ribeye, now I haven't done the T-bone, but I'm sure the T-bone was great. If anything, there was more marbling in the T-bone with the Angus than there was in the ribeye, which was surprising, actually, because the T-bone is the fillet and it's a New York strip. but the marbling looked pretty good, especially in New York strip. Now for the tomahawk, the national beef. I cooked up yeah, there was another one. I cooked up a T-bone. It's actually in the refrigerator. But I cooked up one of the T-bones out of curiosity because I saw it had marbling. I forgot. Sorry about that. I still got my phone hangover. And the T-bone was really good. Of course, the filet was tender. Well, I shouldn't say that because you can buy filet here. It's tough as nails too. But the filet was tender. But the New York strip portion of it was really tasty. I was just had enough of steak, so I wrapped it up, put it in the refrigerator. I'll eat it tonight or tomorrow or something. It was just too much steak. So the T-bone I would actually recommend. And because the T-bone, the New York strip on the T-bone was good, I'd probably order the New York strip. They have New York strip. That's probably good. And that was very inexpensive, like $5 a pound or something. So the ribeye was more, but the New York strip was actually pretty inexpensive on the website. So the ribeye, tough as hell. So depending on how you cook it, I imagine if you cook it sous vide, that probably would come out okay. If you thin slice it, make ribeye steak sandwiches, be okay. The roast, I don't know. I'm going to try it as a roast, but I'll let you know on that. But T-bone, definitely. So you can order the T-bone from the National Beef, relatively cheap, or you can get the other types at Angus. So there's a follow-up on it. I asked that a lot. Can you get good beef and all of that? And here in Armenia, the supermarkets are somewhat limited. If you go to a place like Perugia, which they have one in Manizales and a bunch around the country, but we don't have one here. You can go in there and you can get Argentina beef. You can get Angus beef. You know, it's just right there on the shelf in vacuum packs. So enough of the beef, I think. Where's the beef? T-bone, $16 a pound in the U.S. Okay. London broil. Eye of round, that's what it is. It's eye of round. Thank you. That's the one I couldn't think of. But so you know how bad eye of round is. You have to use it in very particular way. And thin shaving, that actually works. And making sandwiches out of that. And eye of round has a pretty good flavor. It reminded me very much of that cut. So, you know, you're paying $6-7 a pound for something that, you know, it's probably worth a couple dollars a pound. But like I said, the T-bone with them, I think, is worth it. How does the imported U.S. beef compare to Argentinian Peruvian beef? There's no Peruvian beef here. And I'm not an expert on it. I've been to Peru and I only ate beef once. And it reminded me a lot of Ecuador beef, but that's, you know, one time that doesn't mean anything. But never seen Peruvian beef here. They're not known for it. Argentinian beef, it runs the gamut, but Argentina employs a lot of cattle raising aspects that's used in places like Japan or Brazil, and Brazilian you never get here either. So you can get Argentine beef that's really good, or you can get it that's like shoe leather in the same way. I want to find the source of the Colombian beef that's raised like real cattle. I've had it some time ago. I have no idea where I can access it, to be honest with you. I just don't know how to get my hands on it. And if I had a source for that, that's probably what I'd be buying, because I'd be paying national beef prices, maybe a premium, but it would be half of what the Angus beef would be. Now, again, you know, you might eat a lot of beef. I used to live on a piece of cheese, a glass of wine, and a steak. I mean, I used to live in fruit. But these days, when I ate that first steak, I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning with a big stomach pain. You know, I just don't eat much meat anymore, to be honest with you. And so this week, that's why I couldn't even do that T-bone. I mean, I had to try it, but oh my God, it was just too much. So for me, what I bought was for the video, but the thing is, my freezer is packed now, and as long as it doesn't go bad in the freezer, I got beef for the next year. How does imported U.S. beef compare to Argentinian Peru? I already mentioned that. Is crime rampant in Colombia, as I've been told? I don't know what crime rampant means. In the U.S., crime is rampant. The stats there are worse than here. But again, you have to go city by city. Like, would you consider Chicago and Baltimore and L.A. or Atlanta, relatively safe or relatively crime-free? Well, absolutely not. Here, there's crime, but the vast majority of crime are in particular areas. And if you don't frequent those areas, you don't really have a problem. Colombia, except for those areas, if you were able to cut those areas out of the picture, Colombia is an extremely safe place to be. I never worry, but I never go to those places. But you could say that in a place like the U.S. too. I mean, well, if I don't go to Baltimore, and if I stay in a place like upstate New York, then I'm not going to run into any crime. You can leave your doors open, the keys in the car. So, that's what's hard to get across to people, because there's no monolith. It's not like, well, Colombia's got all this crime. Where does it have all this crime? Here in Armenia, we've got four barrios, four neighborhoods in all of Armenia that's got, 38, I think it is, neighborhoods. We've got four. They're in the south. Basically, you can call them the ghetto. So, you have in the U.S., you've got cities, and then you got these areas that are the ghetto that has nothing there, no reason to go there. And if you go there, you're probably going to run into some problems. That's where our crime is in Armenia. Occasionally, maybe something. Generally, no. Like I say, I mean, you don't even get your phone heisted, here in the north. There's nothing going on. So, so what's the crime in Armenia? Do you count all the places that you would live 24/7 and go and shop and hang out? And would you want to qualify them based on the crime in those neighborhoods that never the 22 shall meet? That would give the impression that there's, crime in Armenia, not the Armenia I live in. And I don't mean gated community. You've got those, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the entire north half of the city is crime-free, and the vast majority of the south is relatively crime-free. You might lose a cell phone occasionally. You might get a pickpocket, but there's not any real crime. There's no carjackings, and you don't have the motorcycles with the second person, stopping and grabbing your stuff and scooting away. It's just something we don't have here. So what I would recommend is, big cities, you have to be more careful. Armenia's, it's not even 300,000 people in the city itself. But if you go to Medellin, crime's on the rise there. You got to be careful. But you read the things, the Facebook, you have to laugh on these because you'll have guys complaining about, you know, the crime is terrible. Well, if you're hit with a crime, then everything's crime, and if you've never had a problem with crime, you think it's crime free. But on Facebook, you read these things. Yeah, these people are full of it. You know, there's lots of crime here. You can't even be out at 2 o'clock in the morning and walk home, you know, half in the bag without getting mugged. Yeah. Try that in New York City. You know, it's like, isn't that the prime target for a criminal? I mean, aren't you setting yourself up to be the perfect mark? It's like, you don't do those things. Don't go out and get drunk till 2 o'clock in the morning, or at the very least, don't do it alone. Go with some other people. Don't walk home. Take a taxi home. You know, you gotta use some common sense. I mean, would you go to Vegas and do that? Well, I have, but it's stupid. You know, you're just setting yourself up. So, you know, crime is something, when you talk about it in a country, you really need to understand it. You need to understand what it is, where it is, how it is, because the stats will lie to you. You know, they talk about kidnappings. Well, kidnappings are almost non-existent, except in the area along the Venezuela border. And I mentioned one last week just to reinforce, because I've said that in the past. But again, not a place that you would have no reason to go there. I have round I had at a restaurant in Barranquilla while there 2 weeks ago. It was good for what it was, slow braised, served with a sauce. Yeah, I mean, you can take tough meats and you can dress them up. Sous vide is really a magical thing. As a matter of fact, I think all the time about, you know, can I figure out how to save for a sous vide system, because that would take a lot of the issue out of it. Because if the meat's flavorful and all you really need to do is tenderize it, and you don't want it to taste like pineapple, that'll tenderize it really good, but you get this pineapple taste to it. Sous vide is a way to go. Because of crime, even dogs are stolen regularly. Oh, I'm from Ireland, and Colombians here say they're in heaven compared. Colombians here say they are in heaven compared with Colombia. I'm very confused on that. Oh, Colombians here, as in here in Ireland. Sorry. So Colombians in Ireland say they're in heaven compared to Colombia. Well, I would say, how long have they been there and where did they live? When I lived here 20 some years ago, it was nothing but crime, and it was everywhere. But it was because more than half of the population was unemployed. Malnutrition was a huge problem. FARC was at its peak. There was even FARC here in Quindío. So criminal organizations, cartels, I mean, the country was a disaster, which is why, you know, the President Uribe I'm a fan of his, because he cleaned it all up as much as could be, as far as he could go in his terms. So if they've been there for a while, yeah, I could see that. Or if they lived in a place like Cali and they lived in some, you know, average neighborhoods, fair amount of crime in Cali. You know, so again, it depends. You missed William's previous comment about the armed robbery at the restaurant. Good morning. There was an armed robbery at Beluto's last week. Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know. They're moving in. William, if you're still on, if you've got a link to an address, I'd like to see that. Thanks for pointing that out. You're right, I missed it because I'm having to use the chat that I can barely read. But I'm saying what Colombians are telling me. Yes, but I just explained that. just because they're Colombian doesn't mean, for example, if it's a Colombian that was born and raised in Cali, he has no idea about the Colombia that exists in Quindío, for example. It's night and day. And if you're an American that's born and raised in Chicago, he would have no idea what it's like to live in Ohio. You know, it's not a entire country issue. And what I'm trying to tell you is there's parts of the country, the vast majority of the country, where there's little to no crime. And then you have areas that are deadly, you don't want to go to. And then you've got points in between, like a lot of the areas in Cali. You know, it's like you have to be really careful. You have to be on your toes. So you also have a situation which at some point will increase crime. It's doing it all over the world as inflation keeps pounding away. And this is, you know, every country. You're going to have a breaking point where people's wages just aren't enough to live on. And at some point, people are going to want to survive. And so that's when you're going to start to see at first anomalies, like in Medellin. It used to be you'd see no crime in Poblado and almost never in Laurales. Now you're seeing on a regular, it's not a surprise anymore to get pickpocketed or robbed or other things in those barrios. And it used to be hands off. They wouldn't go there. So as inflation is hammering people, it's going to creep. And you're going to see that everywhere. You know, that's a lot to do with why crime rises all over the place. I've been going to Colombia for 14 years and never experienced any problem. Like Lauren says, there's crime, but it's where you go and what you do. I don't go where I know better. That's so much of it. I never experience anything because I know not to go where that would happen. However, I could also do things contrary to the way that I live, and I would start to run into various crime, like maybe my cell phone will get stolen or things like that. You know, it's like, just don't do those things. Don't go to those places. You won't have any problems. I have a pint and cool it, okay? Swallow your pride, chill. You don't always have to be acknowledged. Huh? Not following that. Okay. Do you have any other questions? Yes. Here we go. Which banks are you using to withdraw funds? Banks that charge nominal or no fee from your Capital One 360. Also, something blocking there. What alternative means do you have in case a particular bank is down? Okay. Well, if a particular bank is down, wait an hour and try again. I've never had issues because computer systems go down once in a while. It's usually just for a matter of minutes, and it's not very, well, in the last 5 years, maybe a couple times it's happened. I've talked about this, but you asked, so I'll answer it again happily. My 360 account, I use my 360 debit card and I withdraw money from the ATM. I only use Davivienda ATM. And when it comes up to the screen about, do you accept this transaction, I always say no, because the transaction it's asking you to accept is an exchange rate that's not very favorable. But if you say no, you don't accept it, then you get the actual exchange rate for that moment or within an hour or so. So I use Davivienda. There's no fees. And with Davivienda, you can take out as much as Well, the most I've ever taken out was in one visit was 7 million pesos. So 7 million pesos, like $1,600. Um, I can't imagine that you would need more than that, but if you do, you can go back the next day and take out another 7 million, or maybe it's even more. And that's for, usually it's a couple million I get, I could pay my rent or whatever. Now, the end of last year, because of, well, reason doesn't matter, and I preach against getting banks here, but the caveat to that, and I've tried to clarify, is be here for a year or two before you make that kind of decision. Don't do it right away. And I won't go into all the reasons because that's a whole nother video, but I've got videos out there where I talk about it. But once you know specifically all the possible downside, upside, but then go for it. And the only bank that I recommend at this point is Bank Colombia. The reason being is they're the only bank that will treat you as a foreigner as though you were a citizen. Every other bank will block you if you don't have a citizenship card. Not for basic transactions. They'll take your money and you can transfer the money and you can pay bills and you can do that. But everything else is off the table. With Bank Colombia, well, I'll give you an example. I signed up with Bank Colombia. It was a month later, they sent me unsolicited a MasterCard Classic card. Didn't have a huge credit line, but the starting credit line, I think, was 2 million pesos, I think. So it sits in my wallet. Last month, I went on my phone app to do something, and this message came up, and I clicked past it, did what I had to do, and then I went back in to see what was it I just blew by. It might be important. And they're saying, we're upgrading your credit card. So if you want to know more, click here. So I clicked here, and it says, we are sending you the card. You'll see it in a couple days, blah, blah, blah. And it's Visa Gold. And the starting credit limit on that is 9 million pesos. You can't even get a card through the other banks because they require that you be a citizen. They have a citizen cedula. And here they're throwing cards at me. Rappi did the same thing. They're throwing cards at me that you don't even ask for. And the funny thing is, they didn't upgrade me because the one was a MasterCard, and the one that they sent me was a Visa. So now I actually have two cards from Bank Colombia. Okay, I throw that out just as that's something just happened to me. But there's a number of other things. For example, maybe someday you might want to consider getting a mortgage. You can actually do that through Bank Colombia with a healthy amount as a down payment. Where again, the other banks, if you're not a citizenship, it can be problematic. So it's good at tracking your costs and expenses. So if you ever need to verify certain things, they have a really good system to do that. So there's some advantages to it. And once I learned that the disadvantages weren't going to apply to me, then there was no reason not to do it. And I don't have to pay any fees with them. It's there. It's an asset. So what I do now is I go to the bank, I withdraw money with my Capital One debit card. I take that cash, I deposit it into Bank Colombia, and then with Bank Colombia now, my situation is that I can pay my rent through there off my phone. I can pay all my bills, my cell phone. I can pay everything off of there. If I want to, I don't know, pretty much anything you want to do, because Bank Colombia has a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of different payment portals. The biggest one is PSE, and Bank Colombia works flawlessly with them, and also with Nequi. A lot of people transact with Nequi. Example, when I was in Pijao, videos coming out. If it wasn't from my cell phone, it would be out actually last night, but by Wednesday. When I was in Pijao, it was through booking. She was supposed to have a credit card but set up, but she didn't. But she did have a Nequi card. So I was able to send money from Bank Colombia to her Nequi card to pay for the room. So no money needed to be transacted. So that was pretty good. YouTube not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. Except I look here and they're getting a very strong signal from me. Typical. All right. So which beef So which beef company is better flavor-wise? Flavor-wise, of course, Angus beef is the way to go. If I had a lot of money, I'd order from them only. But I'm glad I did what I did, aside from letting you guys know. I know now that I can, okay, everything doesn't have to be ribeye, and I can get T-bone from the cheap company, and it was damn good. 2 years in Colombia, Capital One. Capital One, Da Vivienda, no problems. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the way to go. Why hurry until you're here long enough to understand all the nuances of being here, and at that point, make that decision? It's kind of like, you don't want to come here and just get yourself a condo or get yourself a house and then learn later why that was such a huge mistake. Be here for a while until you figure out all aspects of it and you can make a good decision and then do it. Because some decisions you can't back away from. You buy that house and now you're stuck with it. You can't sell it. Your money's tied up and you don't want to be there. That's kind of hell on earth. You get the bank, you get too tied in with the government, you end up having to pay fees don't set yourself up. Wait until you know for sure what to do, because things can be conflicting here. If you owe taxes, pay the taxes. But most people that retire here aren't in a situation where they have to, but they could voluntarily set themselves up to. So, why do that if you didn't have to? You pay Suro with Bank Colombia. I do. I didn't used to, but I do now. Video freezing intermittently. Yeah, YouTube has got me. I can see the signal of what I'm sending to the internet, and it is going full blast. It's like a 12-inch water pipe at full pressure. So, as happens. And my CPU usage is 3.5%. So there's nothing on my end dragging anything down. All right. Because it's freezing and because we're 4 minutes over, I'll do a last call. There was a contribution that I didn't notice from another anonymous. I want to thank you very much. I appreciate that. And last call for any kind of questions, and we'll wrap it up for the day. I'm sorry for the sound problems this morning. I checked everything a little while before I went on, and it was all working, and I don't know what happened, but it happens once in a while. That was on my end. That wasn't YouTube. I am thinking of applying for citizenship, but immigration asks for proving of paying tax, but I don't meet the threshold. You can be a citizen without having to pay tax. You ever send money from Bank Colombia to U.S. Bank? No, I've never done that. Never needed to do that. I imagine you can. I mean, you can wire money. They have a lot of ways to send money along. So I don't know. Ron, thanks for everything. You're welcome. All right. We are going to end it here. Again, thank you all. Appreciate the contributions. Thank you for your patience. I know how frustrating it can be. So let's end it here. Say goodbye to my guinea pig. Ciao.